What I discovered when I first got into meditation is that what triggered my anxiety at the time when I was going through that bad phase in my life, it was just so many different levels, right, to where I was. And all of it stems from the thoughts that I was having, very negative thoughts. Even the positive thoughts, even the things that I thought were positive were actually very negative. I had the thought, I had the belief that by going out, getting drunk, partying, dating different women, I had this belief and these thoughts that this is what makes me happy. This is because I'm having fun, right? I'm laughing, I'm dancing, I'm feeling great, I'm with beautiful women. You're lost in this thought process and these beliefs that are actually quite destructive. And so as a young man, I guess I didn't really care. I just thought this is what makes me happy. But in the end, it was very superficial happiness. And so I realized that the problem wasn't really who I was. My problem was the way I was thinking, how I identified myself. And so how I identified my happiness and what I was doing, I was completely lost, right? This happens to us a lot where we, maybe not as extreme case that I was, we can end up being lost in thoughts in many ways in our day-to-day life where we just overthink things, right? We either spend too much time thinking about a problem or we don't spend enough time trying to find the right solutions and working towards solutions. One of the things that I notice about our thinking is that we tend to react very quickly, right? And this is a problem for many traders, is that being impulsive tends to be a big issue with trading, because when we react before we think, before we actually be objective and follow our rules, sometimes we tend to be very impulsive. And that's where we end up making self-sabotaging mistakes like overtrading, chasing losses, revenge trading, and being too greedy, or even actually being quite fearful and hesitant to pull the trigger or get out of positions, right? And cutting our losses very, very quickly in order to reduce those losses. Those thoughts that are happening on a subconscious level are then being reflected upon in a very impulsive, very quick reactions in your behavior. So when we're trading, sometimes we act without actually following the procedure. And it's not until afterwards that we realize that, whoa, I've reacted, I'm breaking my rules. And that is a bit too late already. And so you can be lost in thought in those moments, because what's actually happening is that you end up getting lost on a subconscious level. This is all down to problems that happen, like memories that occur in our past. So our memories are fractal. The reactions that we have are fractal, right? Our emotions are fractal. So when something has happened to us in the past, have been in our childhood or at any stage in our life, or even with our trading, right? There are certain traumatic events that have happened in our life that we always remember, that we retain. And so what ends up happening is that when you are put in that situation or a similar situation where you get similar emotions, that then triggers, your subconscious triggers an emotional response. And it's the same response that you had when you had that traumatic event. And the problem with this is that most of these traumatic events are buried deep in your subconscious. They're not in your conscious memory, right? They're in your subconscious memory. They're in there. And so what ends up happening is that you get these reactions, these impulsive reactions in the market when there is uncertainty involved, when there is money at risk involved, or when you're trying to make money, you're trying to make money very quickly. We get this excitement, right? And so those impulsive reactions that we get, it's just us trying to, I guess, it's like that fight or flight response, right? And so we're trying to fight our way through the situation. We're trying to win that trade. We're trying to get back that profit or that capital that we've just lost, right? It's that survival instinct that to come in and do that. And that ends up landing us in very difficult situations as traders. We break our rules. We then start having these same patterns start occurring where we have all sorts of thoughts about ourselves, and we end up identifying ourselves with those thoughts. If we keep breaking our rules, if we keep being impulsive, we start identifying with that behavior. And so we start to doubt ourselves. And most traders actually quit. They can't take the pain, right? And all this is just because of your thoughts, right? And your thoughts can turn into actual physical pain, that you actually feel uncomfortable from the thoughts that you're having. And, most people give up. But some of us, the small percentage, the ones that can break through those self-limiting thoughts, those criticisms, those judgments of ourselves, and we start to just not identify with those. Although a part of us wants to quit, a part of us wants the suffering to stop, that pain, that psychological pain, we break through that. And so there is light at the end of the tunnel. Some of us, especially in this community, that have gone through these breakthroughs. And I'll be really interested to hear what your breakthroughs were. And, when you have those thoughts in your head, those self-doubting thoughts, those thoughts of, man, there's no point me continuing. I suck at this. I'm never going to make it. I'm better off just quitting. I'm better off listening to my parents, better off listening to my partner or my friends. I got a friend who's very successful and he works in blah, blah, blah. I should just do something like that. It's a lot safer than trading. That voice, right? That voice, that right there, I'm sure that some of us here in this community, we've heard that voice many times and we have broken through it. We've beaten it time and time again, but it does come back. It's happened to me a few times in my career as a trader where that voice becomes very strong. But then there is this other part of you. If you can separate yourself from your thoughts and you don't identify with that, you don't attach yourself to that, then you're in a position that you can actually not listen to that voice. Well, that's a very powerful situation to be in, where you can actually be aware of that voice. And that's a topic that I wanted to discuss today, is that awareness. That awareness is so powerful, because when we're not aware, we're in a state of, when we're not present, because that's what awareness is. When you're aware, you're actually suddenly in the present moment. You're aware of what you're thinking. You are aware of what you're feeling. You are aware of what you're seeing. So all your senses suddenly come alive. You can feel, you can see, you can taste, you can hear, you can touch, right? That's awareness. And awareness occurs in the present moment. However, when we're lost in our thoughts, we are feeling dissatisfaction of somewhat. And we're dissatisfied with the present moment of what we think is the present moment. So it might be that we've just lost a trade. Therefore, we feel dissatisfaction. Or there's even situations where we might actually hit a particular profit level and we decide to exit the position. But what ends up happening is price keeps going in your favor. And then you feel dissatisfied that you took profit at that level when price went even further, and you feel, man, I should have held that trade for longer. There's this pattern that keeps occurring, right? Of dissatisfaction, of greed, of fear, of worry of the future, and this judgment of the past. All of this occurs when we disconnect from the present moment. This is something that has been extensively researched, and I've gone through a lot of research. I haven't conducted any research myself, but I have seen a lot of the neuroscience that has researched this topic of mindfulness, the benefits it has for your mental health, your physical health, your focus, your stress levels, how it reduces stress levels, it reduces anxiety, how it improves and enhances performance. Through the enhancement of performance, your level of concentration improves and increases. The duration of your concentration and focus increases. Your resilience also increases. And so these are skills, these are meta skills that as a trader, you need to have these qualities. You need to develop these skills. The skill of resilience. Imagine you getting beat down by the market, whether it be because you're breaking your rules, or whether you're going through a reversion to the mean of your strategy, where you're just going to be losing, a few trades in a row. You're going through that stage, right? And you have that voice in your head that comes up again and again and again during these moments. But then you've built over time and you've developed resilience. And so when you hear that voice, you're aware of it, you ignore it, you do what you need to do. When you go through that losing streak and you have that, again, you hear that voice, you show awareness to it, but you stick to the plan. You don't change strategy. You don't strategy hop. You don't start doubting yourself. You don't start blaming the market or blaming a signal provider. You are aware of the situation and you show resilience. You keep going. You stick to the plan. And that is a quality of a good trader.